Things are elephant at the Jacaranda grounds, and they have been that way since morning. It is very clear that the instructions to the police were very simple. Make sure that NASA meeting does not happen. And so anybody who passed those grounds in the early hours of this morning was greeted with quite a smell, because somebody went and poured raw sewage, right in the middle of the ground where there was supposed to be the dais for the meeting. And then truckloads and truckloads have been going to the grounds and pouring rubbish on it, garbage. The whole intent and purpose here is very clear, okay, to ensure that the meeting does not take place under any circumstances. We even have helicopters monitoring the situation from the air above. I guess this is how you run a nation with about 20% support, 20% voter support in the country. But the big question is, for how long? For all intents and purposes, it seems that the NASA meeting will not take place after all. Okay? Well, you can never really underestimate NASA people. They might pull something together for a last minute impromptu meeting somewhere close by. Of course, I'm keeping that situation monitored very closely to see what happens. But as of now, it seems that the government machinery has succeeded. I think it is safe to assume that the thing which the government feared most about the Jacaranda grounds event was that somebody was going to swear in Raila Odinga as the president of the country. Well, it would have no legal bearing, but it would have the sheer numbers behind it. But there, have you noticed that the Jubilee crowd no longer talks about numbers these days? I find that very fascinating. As our Luya brothers say, Vindu vichenjanga. It seems that the statement Jubilee have the numbers is now a very big joke. The lie about the tyranny of numbers, the propaganda about the tyranny of numbers that many of us, me included, swallowed hook, line and sinker, has been revealed, has been exposed, and it's out there, and people now know that that is not true. So we have a Jubilee party which has moved away from shouting at every excuse, we have the numbers, we have the majority, to a Jubilee party that fears numbers. Really, that's what's going on at Jacaranda grounds. Fear of numbers. Yes, you'll swear in a president. Yes, it's not legal, but oh my, the numbers. Those numbers are causing quite a lot of people some sleepless nights. And I have news for Jubilee. Those numbers are going to grow and grow. In fact, they're going to grow rapidly. Thanks a lot to Jubilee. Because when you treat people like this, taking us back to the dark days, what do you expect? Do you expect the numbers to be less? No way. The numbers are going to grow in leaps and bounds. But as I mentioned in an earlier recording, Jubilee really have run out of options, okay? They have run out of options. They have run completely out of options. And the only option remaining now is to be draconian, to force things. The only way a minority president who has got a very tiny minority support in the country can rule the entire country is by use of brute force. Nothing else will work. But this brute force is unconstitutional. Yes, it goes against our very constitution, against the very constitution that the president is taking his oath on this morning. That very constitution is taking an oath to protect. Is the one that is being defiled and raped even as he takes his oath of office. Oh boy. Anyway, we'll take a short commercial break. When we come back, I have a very interesting letter from a member of this channel, an old friend, who raises some very interesting questions, okay, which should have some very interesting answers. Don't miss it. I'll be back in a bit. Welcome back. Now, this guy is a friend of mine for many years. He has been with Kumekucha right from inception, shortly after inception, yeah? So he has been following me for a very, very long time. And one thing I can tell you about this guy is neutral. He's completely neutral. That one I can vouch for him. He doesn't fall on either side unless he has changed recently. Okay? Now I'm just going to read you his letter. But this is a Kenyan-based down under. You know, when people say down under, you know what they mean, eh? Australia, New Zealand, kule. Eh? Very far from Kenya. Is it 24-hour flight from Kenya? Hey, mbali sana. Anyway, this is what he's asking. Hi, Chris Kumekucha. Could you please explain to me a few things that don't really make sense to me? First, why did NASA go to court the last minute on the 25th November to have the elections postponed, knowing that court cases take time? Why didn't they file the case earlier as soon as the election date was finalized? By going the last minute, they allowed Jubilee time to intimidate and stonewall the Supreme Court judges. In my opinion, they should have gone to court much earlier to give themselves more time. I would compare it to like trying to catch an international flight. There's no use of going to the airport last minute. Lazima ujipange mapema, otherwise you'll most likely miss the flight. If they had not succeeded in having the election postponed, the most logical thing would have been for them to just participate in the elections on 26th November. If Jubilee rigged again, like they did on 8th, NASA should have just gathered the evidence again and just presented to the Supreme Court. The court would have probably nullified again and ordered the IEBC to be probed and probably reformed. Now the Supreme Court upheld the sham elections. Uhuru will be sworn in today, and it's Jubilee tano tena, mpende mspende. So what is your take on this? Now, one of the reasons why I've read this email is because I know this is the feeling of a lot of you guys out there. Yeah, you feel that NASA have made a mistake. NASA made a mistake to boycott the elections. NASA have made a mistake, now they've not even sworn in their leaders, or things could not be darker for NASA. Well, one thing I can say is that NASA are not perfect. The NASA think tank is not perfect. They're bound to make mistakes. Okay? However, having said that, so far, yeah, let me just emphasize that. So far, NASA have made very few mistakes. In fact, to be honest, they have not made any major mistake I can think of. The other thing I want to point out to my friend and to the rest of you is that there are a lot of things that happened, yeah, including the withdrawal of Raila Odinga and Kalonzo Musyoka from the race, which, according to a Supreme Court declaration, yeah, interpretation of the Constitution, should have called for fresh presidential polls. Indeed, using the very same law, yeah, that the IEBC initially based the repeat election on, yeah, where they wanted only Raila Odinga and Uhuru Kenyatta on the ballot, yeah, after the Supreme Court nullified the first election. So there are a lot of things that happened there. You know, sometimes when you're in the trenches, it's very different from where you're observing things from a distance, and you don't know the heat in the kitchen. That's what I can say about that. But one thing I can tell you with absolute certainty, yeah, that I'm sure NASA did not make a mistake, yes, was concerning participation in the repeat election. Okay? It was very clear that those repeat elections are going to be carried out exactly the way the August 8th elections are going to be carried out. And by NASA participating, they would have legitimized the process. Now, if you can abandon your emotions for a minute and abandon your closeness to the issues here, yeah, just think about it. You hear of a country somewhere that has had elections and the opposition did not take part in that election. Will you recognize that government? I'm just talking about you as an individual. You just read in the news, country X has just had an election. The election was boycotted by the opposition. Okay? And by the figures, yes, the opposition is like 75%, and those who took part in the elections are like 25%, roughly. Yeah, those are the figures. Or even maybe let's humor Jubilee a bit, 30-70. Yeah, 70% of the country did not take part in that election. Yeah, 30% took part, and the president was elected from that 30% which took part. What's your view of such a government? As I said yesterday, the swearing in is not the end. It is the beginning of the movie. Yeah, I said that yesterday. Now, here is something, this is NASA's biggest weapon right now, okay? And it's something that Jubilee can never wash off. You can have a shower 10 times a day, you can use Omo, you can use the strongest detergent, but this fact you cannot wash off, yeah? That you took part, you were elected in an election where 70% of the country did not participate. The opposition and their candidate boycotted the elections that he won. That one, they cannot wash off. And whoever was confirming the participation by heads of state and government in the swearing-in ceremony today, I can assure you they had a very hard time, yeah? Because most governments which are wise would keep away from such a swearing-in ceremony, yeah? There are so many countries that did not turn up. There are so many states, friends of Kenya, that did not turn up. That should tell you a lot already. The key word here is legitimate, yeah? Is this a legitimate government or is it an illegitimate government? That is a question you need to ask yourself. Not who was sworn in, when they were sworn in, how were they sworn in, did they use a Bible, did they use what? That's not important. What is important is just one key question. Yes, somebody is being sworn in, but is this a legitimate government or is it an illegitimate government? And if you believe it's a legitimate government, tell me why you believe it's a legitimate government. A government elected by 30% of the electorate? A government elected when the opposition completely boycotted the elections, did not take part in it? Yeah? You tell me how you think this is a legitimate government. Now, running a government is already hard work, is already very hard work as it is, without putting in the extra obstacle of illegitimacy. So I hope I've answered that question fully. Yeah? To summarize it, Jubilee tano tena? I don't think so. Until next time, this is Kshs Kumekucha.